What's good, people? Welcome to my first tutorial. Today I am going to show you how to get Blender's camera to effectively behave like a section plane using the clip start and the clip end of the camera settings. Essentially, when working with architectural software like SketchUp, Rhino, AutoCAD and the like, it is pretty easy to set up a section plane that cuts through your building or your model. Now, given the fact that Blender is not predominantly an architectural software, if utilized properly, it can be a beast of a software to design in. And today I will show you how to use Blender's camera effectively as a section plane. I am using Blender 4.1.1 for this tutorial, and I'll be making heavy use of shortcuts. I have my screencast keys turned on, so please try your best to follow, and if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to leave a comment and I'll try my best to answer your questions. With that being said, let's begin. In your default Blender scene, delete the cube and the light source. Reset the location and rotation of the camera by pressing Alt G, Alt R, and then rotate down the x-axis by 90 degrees. Now what we're going to do is we're going to affect the clip start and the clip end. We're going to control these because this is what essentially controls our section in Blender. So before we do anything, let me add a plane into the scene. So I add a Shift A mesh plane RX90. So basically rotate on the x-axis by 90 degrees. Control A to apply the scale and rotation. This is second nature, so make that a habit to apply the scale of your object. Now, in your object properties, go down to visibility and then make sure it's disabled in render so it doesn't affect anything in the render, and then make sure you disable everything under ray visibility, and then collapse that and then go to viewport display and then make sure this is set to wire, just so that we can actually see what we're doing in our scene. Go back to your camera settings and set the clip start to 1. We do this because so that there's no offset when we actually connect the clip start value to the plane that we're going to use as a control point for that clip start value. So right click on the clip start, add a driver. The type we're using is a scripted expression, and the expression type is a VAR 0.001. So basically just leave out the default, and then the type of variable we're using is a distance variable, and we are going to be affecting the camera. So click on the eyedropper on the first option and click on the camera. Go back to your clip start, right click, edit driver, and then use the eyedropper to select the plane. At this point, for neatness, I'm just going to rename everything, or just for order, I'm going to rename everything. So I'm going to name this clip start. Ooh. And then I'm going to rename the camera section camera, or section cam. Keep it short. Now, essentially what we've done is we're using this plane to control the clip-in distance of the camera, the clip start distance of the camera. Now, just to make sure, just to hammer the point home, I'm going to turn on the viewport display, the show limits of the viewport display, and as you can see, if we move this plane, it moves the clip start control point of the camera, and then you can see it changes here. So if I change it here, it's not going to change, so it changes in the viewport here. Now what I'm going to do now is control the clip end as well. So I'm going to Shift A, add another plane to the scene, RX90, scale it up just a little bit. You don't need to do this, but I'll apply the scale and apply the rotation, and then go back to your object display properties and set it to wire on the viewport display, and then under visibility, make sure it's disabled in the render, and disable all the parameters under ray visibility as well. Go back to your camera and then right click, set this to 1 again so there's no offset, and right click on the end on the clip end and say add driver, click add driver, type a scripted expression, leave this as its default values, but change this variable type to distance again. We want to control the camera. The object we're trying to control is the camera. And right click edit driver, and object we're using is a new plane. I'm going to rename that clip end. So now when we move this and when we move those two planes, you can see that we are actually controlling it. And if we move the camera, you can see it's locked to those 2 points. It's locked to the two planes. Now I want it so that when I move the camera, I want these two planes to move as well. So I'm going to parent these two planes to the camera by selecting the camera. Make sure I select the planes, but make sure the camera is selected last. So as you can see, it's bright orange, which means it's active selection. So press Control P and then just set parent. So now if we rotate it, you can see it rotates in the same direction as the camera, and if we move it, it moves with the camera as well. So now Alt Shift S selection to cursor basically. So now that's our control point. Now save your work as you go, and then just to hammer the point home again, I'm going to move this back and Control V. I'm bringing in a form I modeled earlier in a different scene, and you can do this for any, if you're building, you can do this for your building or any model you've made in Blender. So essentially this form has a solidify modifier attached to it, and it has 3 edge loops as well. Now the point I'm trying to make here is, if I was to add a new camera to the scene, and then if I press Alt R, RX90, now if I was to try to snap or get this to cut at one of these, get this camera to cut this form at one of these vertices or edges or the face, whatever face I want, I would have to eyeball it in the camera settings. So I'll turn on viewport display limits once more, go 7 into top orthographic mode, and then I would have to so basically I want to snap it to the middle, and as you can see, it's not exactly accurate no matter how much I make it. So, and it becomes very fiddly, especially when you zoom in. So what we are going to do is with our snap settings turned on, and you can just do that by pressing this and then making sure that this is set to vertex. But I use Control because I'm just used to using shortcuts. So GY Control and then snap to that point there. And as you can see, instead of me being fiddly with the camera, I can actually control where I want to snap or where I want the control point, or where I want the clip start to begin and where I want it to end, essentially. So we don't need this anymore. Now I'm gonna go into the camera view. Before I do that, let me split my viewport. Make sure this is set to camera, and I'm gonna make sure my camera's orthographic. Yeah, and then make sure my pixels are square. I like working with square pixels. So just GZ. Make sure that's in the middle. Composition and all that. Yeah, so also turn on cavity just so we can see what we're working with. Yeah, and as you can see, it's cutting in the location we want to cut it at. So if I click on this again and then snap it to this point, you can see it's affecting the clip start at whatever location I want it to cut. So basically it just becomes more accurate to work with. So essentially I'm trying to make the clip start and the clip end a more accurate control parameter. Yeah. Yeah, so Shift C, And that will be the end of this tutorial here. Let me know if this tip was useful for you, and let me know if you would like to see more tips. And yeah, like, comment, subscribe, all of the above, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay blessed. Peace.